Good morning, everyone. We will get started shortly. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to get joined and get their audio connected. Haley, it looks like we've got everyone out of the waiting room if you'd like to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for the second part of our New Mexico Match Fund recipient training on submitting reports. I know some of you weren't able to join us yesterday because of the rescheduled training, but glad to see a lot of folks are here today. The other trainings will be available recorded on DFA's Match Fund page once they're all finished. So don't worry if you missed the first one, but we're glad to have you here to talk about reporting and the new system that will be managing the New Mexico Match Fund Awards in, which is called AmpliFund. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, who is our wonderful AmpliFund representative today to train you all on submitting reports. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Haley. All right, as Haley said, we're going to look at how to submit your performance reports today. So there's some various pieces to this, and we're going to start by going through each of those individually. In AmpliFund, it will be called adding achievements and accomplishments, adding expenses, closing a reporting period. We'll also look at what to do if you need to resubmit your reporting, and then how you can use tasks to help manage this process. In terms of some housekeeping notes before we get started, I will have a time where you can ask questions at the end of the meeting. If you have questions throughout the meeting, I'll ask that you put them in the chat and I will address those the best I can as we go along. Otherwise, I'll answer them at the end. And please stay muted throughout the presentation until we get to that point where you can ask questions at the end. So with that, we're going to start first by looking at a process flow for your reporting. You're going to receive an automated task from AmpliFund letting you know when your reporting is due. At that point, you're going to navigate to a couple different parts of AmpliFund. One, your performance plan, where you're going to answer a question about the outcomes that you achieved. And then you're also going to enter expenses against a budget. And then you're going to submit both of those together in a report to the state, where the state is going to review them and then make a decision on whether it needs to be reopened. The specific scenario that we're going to look at today for training is we're going to practice submitting our reporting for January 2025. So the question that we'll all need to answer with each reporting is describe the outcomes, results, benefit, and or use of the appropriated funds. The update that we're going to provide for this round of reporting is that in January, we accomplished items A, B, and C, and this resulted in us meeting our first milestone. And over our last reporting period, we had about $7,300 of expenses. So we're going to add those against our budget, one expense for equipment and one expense for contracts. We're going to start by looking at how to provide our narrative update to the state on the outcome of the reporting. So with this, I'm going to come into AmpliFund. And if you were in our overview training on earlier this week, you saw this calendar screen. So this is where these tasks on here are going to come in handy. I'm specifically going to be working with our matching grant. So I can see the tasks that are due for this grant on my calendar. I will also receive task notifications from AmpliFund when my reporting are due. These will come to whoever you assigned as the grant manager via email. The emails will look something like this. They're going to tell you the task name, its due date, and then there's a link where it says view details that you can click to come directly into the task in AmpliFund. So if you're in AmpliFund, you can see your upcoming tasks on the calendar, You'll also get an email reminder that tasks are due. You'll get this new task notification anytime the state sends up a new one. And then depending on your user preferences, whether you suggested you want a daily or weekly digest, you'll also get this compilation of all of the tasks that are past due or upcoming for you that day or week. So there will be a lot of system reminders to help you remember that your reporting is due. Coming back into Amplifund, we've already talked about tasks on the calendar. I can also see tasks to know that my reporting is due and then it's time for me to do it under activity tasks. So this is going to be kind of a compilation of the tasks across all of my grants. And you can see that I have several here, like the grids that we used in our first training of overview. I can filter here. So if I want to just look at my matching grant, I can do that, and I can see all of the tasks here that are due. So to get started with my reporting, I'm going to navigate to this grant. If I'm in activity tasks, I can actually just click on this task name and it's going to open the grant for me. Otherwise, we can use the navigation we learned earlier this week by coming to Grant Management Grants. That will bring us to our grants grid. And then we can use our filters or our views to select the grant that we want to open. The first item that I'm going to do is enter that narrative update for my reporting. To do that, I'm going to come to my top menu. I will click on Post Award, Performance, Performance Plan. The state's going to have set this up for me. So this is the goal that I need to report against each time my reporting is due. If I click Outcomes, I'm going to see that question that I need to answer. To actually provide a response to the state, I'm going to click this trophy icon to enter an achievement. You can see that I've already got one that I entered here previously. To create a new one, I'm going to click the plus sign. That's going to open this pop-up window for my achievements. And this is where I can enter my achievement for the quarter. So my update is that we achieved these items. So I'm going to put that in the answer field. I have an option here to check whether or not this is complete. I'm not going to be complete with this goal until my grant is completely closed. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then I have a field here for internal notes. And if I have any files that I need to upload as supporting documentation, I can do that by clicking Choose Files. My File Explorer will open and I can select the appropriate file that I need to upload. Then click Open. If you don't need that file, you can click the trash can to delete it. So what I need to do is enter my date. I'm reporting for January, so I'm just going to change that to the end of the month. I've entered my answer. And at this point, I can click Create. As you work with this Match Fund award over time, you'll have more and more achievements. You may want to view these holistically. So instead of coming to the performance plan, I can also look at the achievements that I've entered in the past with a report. So if I come to Reports, I'm going to right click and open Post-Award Reports in another menu tab here. And I'm going to look at this grant performance plan detail. This is going to bring in all of those achievements that I've entered in real time. So if I want to kind of get an overview of what I've done, this is a good place to come. So I'm going to use my filter panel on the right to select my matching grant. And then it's going to show me all of the achievements that I've entered. So I can see all of the narrative updates that I've made over time. I could export this if I needed to, or I can just use it as a reference when I'm planning to write my outcome for this month if I wanted to include anything from the past reportings. So that's the first part of my reporting, is I come to the grant, to the performance plan, and I enter an achievement. The next part of my reporting is the financial aspect. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at how to add these expenses against our budget. So we're going to start by finding our budget in Amplifund and then looking at how we can add in those expenses. If I'm doing this all at once and I just entered my achievement, now I'm ready to go in and enter my expenses, I'm going to come out to the main menu of my grant by clicking Performance Plan. So this takes me back in the system. I could have also hit the back button on my browser, and now I get my top menu back on my grant. So I'm going to click Post Award, Financial, Budget. The first time you come to the budget on your award in Amplifund, it will look like this. You'll need to tell Amplifund how you want to view your budget by selecting your options. I would recommend that you always turn on line items, actuals, and remaining. So this is going to give me a nice view of what I've spent against my match fund grant. Everyone's budget is going to look like this, where you have one category called New Mexico Match Fund. There's going to be a cap here at your total awarded amount. And then underneath of that, you have line items. There's not going to be anything budgeted against the line items, but you're going to be able to add actuals against that to see what you've spent down on this award. So eventually, your actuals should equal your total awarded amount. And the line items here are just going to be the standard federal categories that we think of with grants. So when I first come to my budget, I'm going to turn on these options. The next time I come to this specific grants budget, Amplifund's going to remember how I want to view it. So I only need to select those options once. At this point, I can enter my financial reporting. So I need to enter one expense for against each line item for all of the expenses that I had in this reporting period. So in my case, I spent money in both equipments and contracts. So I'm going to enter a comprehensive total across my entire last quarter of what I spent. I'll start with contracts. To enter an expense, I'm just going to click the $sign. Note right now, there's actuals of $10,000 here. So I'm going to click the $sign. And it's going to bring up an expense screen for me. From here, I'm going to create a new expense by clicking the plus sign. It's already selected my line item of contracts, so now I just need to plug in the amount that I spent over that quarter on contracts. I also need to enter a date since I'm reporting for the period ending in January. I'm going to enter that date. I want my expense status to always be reviewed. That's going to let it hit against my budget. And then if I have a description for the state, I can enter that here. I can skip the financials tab. The attachments here are optional. You only need to do that if the state requests. If you do need to do an attachment, you're going to click Choose Files. That will bring up your File Explorer. And you can select the file, or if you need multiple files and you're on a Windows keyboard, you can hold Control and select the multiple files that you need. I'm just going to upload one. For example, you'll see the file name here, and then you'll click Create. So here's that expense that we just created together. Now I also have an expense for equipment. So I'm going to click the plus sign again to create another expense. I'm going to use the drop down to change my line item to equipment. And for this past period, I only spent $100 in equipment. Again, I'm going to date it the end of my reporting period. So for us today, that happens to be the end of January. My expense status will be reviewed. and then I'm going to enter in a description on what I spent these funds for. I can skip the financials tab, attachments are optional, and then I'm going to click create. So at this point, I've entered in my outcome, my narrative update, and I've entered in my expenses. So we've done these first two steps in our reporting. Now what we need to do is submit that information to the state. We do that by closing a reporting period or creating a report that we're sending to the state. To create that reporting period, I'm going to come in my top menu again to Post Award, Management, Reporting Periods. You can see that I've done one in the past and it's rejected. We'll learn how to work with this one in just a minute. But to create a new one for this current period of reporting, I'm going to click the plus sign in our action icons in the upper right. And I need to say what type of period I'm going to create. You're always going to have a period with expenses and achievements because you want to combine that narrative goal for the state and the financials that you're reporting on all in one report. So you're always going to select both options, and then you're going to select the time period that you're reporting against. So in our case, in our demonstration today, we're using January of 2025. So once I've got both boxes checked and my date selected, I'm going to click Save. Then what the system is going to do is it's going to pull in any expenses and achievements that fall within this date range. So we entered two expenses, both dated January 31st, that totaled $7,300. So I see those both showing up here. And if I look down below, I'm going to see a summary of the category they're in. If I click my achievements tab here, I'm going to see something similar. I see that there was one narrative achievement that was within this time frame. So again, this is kind of compiling all the information for you. We looked at our reports post-award. We ran our performance plan detail to see our achievements. So I can easily see here, and I can filter to see what achievements included in my January report. I have something similar that I can do on the financial side as well. So reports, post-award, I can run this grant expense detail report to see all of the expenses that are included in my reporting period here. So I'm going to change my date range to be January only. And I'm going to filter to my grant. And so here's those two expenses that we entered. It totals the $7,380 that I see in my reporting period. So this can be a nice way to just double check that you've included everything. Again, these reports are exportable. There's another report that you may find helpful in this process, and that's the grant budget variance. Again, I'm navigating here by reports post-award. I've just left the tab open. And then I'm right-clicking to open the report in a new tab so I can bounce back and forth. And this is just going to show an overview of my budget. So in my filter panel here, I'm selecting my test FY25 matching grant, and it's just going to show me where my actuals are. So I can turn off columns here that I don't want to see. So if I just want to see where my actuals are, I can see my total spending across this award and how it breaks down into different line items. Again, this is exportable. So these are 3 reports that may be helpful for you as you're doing your reporting to the state on your outcomes and your financials. So I would use these reports to validate that I have everything entered correctly. And then I'm going to come back to my grant and my reporting period. I still haven't submitted this to the state, but now I've checked that I've got all my expenses in, I've got all my achievements in, so I'm ready to submit this to the state. I can use this comments box to provide clarification or more information on financials to the state. I can do the same thing on the achievements, on my narrative goals. And then when I'm done with all of that, I've double checked it, I've entered my comments, I'm going to click close. I will get this pop-up here that's letting me know that when I close it, it's going to send information to the funder. So the state will receive an email whenever I click the close button, and those expenses and achievements are going to become locked down. So I'm going to go ahead and click close. You'll get that little success pop up, and now my reporting period status says closed. If I navigate back to my main menu by clicking reporting periods, and I come back to my performance plan, for instance, and we look at our achievements, you'll notice that this January one no longer has the edit pencil on it. So as soon as you close the reporting period, everything gets locked down that's included in the reporting period. At this point in the process, the state is going to make a decision on whether or not they approve your reporting. There may be some case, if they do approve it, it'll be a tacit approval, so you won't get any notification, it'll just stay in a closed status. If they see an issue with your reporting, maybe they need you to provide further clarification, you will get an email from Amplifund saying your reporting period has been rejected, and it's going to include the date range of that reporting period, and it'll have comments from the state on what you need to correct. So let's look at that process now of how we would resubmit a reporting period that we need to edit. So let's say I've gotten that email from the state. Notice that there's a link in there that's going to take me directly into Amplifund. So I can click that, or I can navigate the long way in Amplifund. So I can come to my grant that it mentions, or I can come to activity reporting periods. And here's my FY25 matching grant. It's going to take me directly into my reporting periods, and I can see that this one has been rejected. If I click into the reporting period itself, I'm going to see kind of that overview that we saw before. I've got one achievement in here, and it looks like a group of expenses totaling to $35,000. So if the state needs me to correct an expense or to correct an achievement, we're going to go through how to do that. I would leave this reporting period open in a tab, and I'm going to right-click on reporting periods to open it in a new tab, and then I'm just going to go through that same process. I'm going to start with my narrative outcomes. Say the state needed me to provide a little more detail on that. I'm going to come to post-award, performance plan. Here's my outcomes goal. I'm going to click achievements. And because this reporting period has been reopened, the achievement that's associated with it has an edit pencil. So I'm going to click this, and this is where I can provide additional information that was requested. And then I'm going to save. Likewise, if I need to enter edit an expense, I'm going to click performance plan to come back to my top menu. I'll click post award, financial expenses. And I'm going to use the time frame to narrow down the expenses that I'm looking for. So this reporting period is from 12/3 to 12/31. So I'm going to use my time filter to choose last month and then click run. Or I can use a custom date here to select the month of December. And click run to bring in my expenses. So I have two expenses here. Perhaps the state provided me some information that on this one for 12/3, I needed to provide a description because I left it blank. So I'm going to enter that description. Everything else was okay. I'm going to click save. And then I would come back to my reporting period. If I left the tab open, I can come here, or I could come to post-award management reporting periods, select my December reporting period. My numbers are going to stay the same because I haven't added anything else, but I have added comments. So I can put my comments here that I added a description to the 12-3 expense, added further clarification on my achievement. And when I've made all of those edits, I'm going to click close. Again, when I do this, it's going to lock down the expenses and the achievements, and it's going to email the state, who's going to review my reporting period again and make a decision on whether they approve it. If they do, my status will stay closed. And if they see something else that's wrong, I'll get the email back. So that's a summary of how to fix a rejected report from the state. So as a brief review, when we get ready to submit our match fund reporting, we're going to start by adding an update to our outcome goals. So we'll navigate to our performance plan and add an achievement. Then we'll add one expense per line item in our budget for the total amount that was expensed that quarter. We can do that in the budget. And then we're going to combine both of those things together in a report and submit an expense and an achievement reporting period to the state. Are there any questions on any of those processes that we've covered? I'm going to start with the questions in the chat. We have one, can you edit these entries if you make a mistake or need to make a change? Yes, it looks like we did cover that a little later. Who reviews the invoice? Is it internal to our organization? So for that, what you're reporting to the state is the spending that you did on the grant over the last quarter. Haley, I don't know if you have any further clarification to add to that one.
Yeah, I would just add that all of these grants are done on a disbursement basis, as you may know. So you will receive all the funding for the grant up front, and we're asking you to quarterly share with us the spend down of that funding. So you can upload invoices or other supporting documentation, and I know there's another question about that later on, into the budget for us to review that justifies what you've reported to us, but you won't be invoicing us directly. I think, you know, in the spirit of this question, it's a great idea to have someone internally review at your organization. And if you, before you submit to the state, and if you weren't in yesterday's training, you can watch the recording when it gets posted next week about how to add different users to your Amplifund account for your organization.
Haley. Okay, and then our last question, when a report is rejected, do we get an email or something that tells us what the problem is? Great question. You will get an email, and it will look like this. In the middle there, you should have comments from the state on what needs to be fixed. So that will come to you via email. All right, if there's any other questions, you can unmute, you can use the chat, whatever way you prefer to ask. I'll pause here for a couple seconds.
I sort of answered Shelley's question, but I'll just add one other quick detail. She asked what kind of documentation we're going to want to attach, and if it's at the reporting level or at the expense level. I think whatever makes the most sense for how you're internally collecting this information. If you have a GL for this grant and you want to just upload that would be sufficient. We're happy to kind of work with whatever makes sense for you when you're uploading documentation.
Thanks, Haley. Okay, while you're thinking of questions, quick reminder, these are kind of your next steps once you get the activation email from Haley. So this is going back to our first training. And then we do have another training at 8:30. So that will tomorrow. So that'll be kind of the last in our training series here. Are there any final questions before we wrap? Hey, Haley, any final thoughts?
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for this great training today. Like previously mentioned, these will be posted on the DFA Match Fund website next week once all the trainings are finished. And you should anticipate to get your activation emails in the next week and a half or so to access the system. And please, if you have any other inquiries that you think of after these trainings, you can always email the Match Fund email, which is matchfund@dfa.nm.gov. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for everyone joining us today.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.